All right, I'm going to keep trying to do these live. Haven't watched the video yet. Fresh, cold, and fresh. All right, so Noel Plum is sort of on the anti-SJW side, but I would say only nominally. He tries to be quite reasonable about the situation. Um, I don't find myself agreeing with him, but I do respect him as probably one of the most solid people on the critical of SJW side. And here we have a video where all of our initial information is, why is it worth arguing with SJWs, a bang bang bang, a dot dot dot, or anyone?
So yeah, this is a video I've been hoping to make for a couple of weeks now.
Oh, what
Just
the
looking for a
fuck?
little bit of...
Why is that not coming through? Oh, because I didn't do this. How about now?
bit of timing just now, and it's this whole business about why bother talking to people about these subjects. I'm probably going to call the video something like why bother talking to SJWs, but in actual fact the same thing would apply if you regard yourself as an SJW. Why bother talking to anti-SJWs, or why bother talking to one particular group of feminists or another, or why bother talking to anti-feminists, or really this whole thing goes across the board. I read so many different comments and so many discussions. Why bother trying to reason with these people? Why bother? It's kind of beyond.
Well, one reason would be because we're in a democracy and we're not going away.
Beyond all redemption kind of thing. And I remember getting the same
And we're not trying to get redemption, and we already have the vote.
kind of comments back in the day with regard to Christians. Why bother talking? They're never going to change. They're not really listening. And when you have those kind of exchanges, you do get those little moments where you feel people aren't listening. And sometimes you'd have a discussion, and what would happen is you'd say something, and effectively what would happen is once you'd hit them with something that they couldn't really answer, or you'd answer the question, they'd just go quiet. Right, they just stop responding. And it's easy to take that entirely negatively and think, you bastard, you're never prepared to admit when you're wrong. You just walk away from the conversation. And sometimes people would walk away from those conversations and then see them asking the same thing somewhere else. They'd say something like, well, if humans came from apes, how come there are other apes, or something like that. So you'd explain speciation, allopatric speciation and sympatric speciation, how it can all work. Right, and then you'd hear them, they just wouldn't respond, and then you'd see the same comment from the same person somewhere else. That obviously isn't a good thing, right? But it isn't all of that. That isn't my entire experience with it. And my other entire experience with it was that people can change and people do take things on board. But it's part of our human nature that people very rarely do it at the time. They very rarely, especially if it's something that they're very much soaked in, it's become part of them, right? Is that they're not going to suddenly go, do you know what, I've had to think about it, and I just totally disown everything that I was saying the other week, all right? Entirely changed my perspective on this.
The whole idea that that we're discussing things to convince the person we're discussing with is ludicrous. That never happens. All right. We are discussing things with each other to find out the crazy ideas the other person has because they're hard to simulate. Cat on the keyboard. And so, if you're trying to convince anybody, it would be the judges in the audience. But even that will fail you. The only sustainable purpose is to find out how other people think.
It hardly ever happens, that. And the times that I saw it happen with regard to people with religion was that what people would do is they would walk away from YouTube. They would walk away from
Okay, so he acknowledges what I was saying.
online engagements in that sphere. It would give them a chance to kind of reinvent themselves or to reposition themselves. And in many ways, it's a lot easier to discuss something when you've repositioned yourself 2 months ago and A, had a chance to think through it, but two, I think it maybe allows you just to salvage a little bit of pride if you can say, yeah, I did used to say that, but that was an old me, right? Whereas if they did used to say that was 5 minutes ago, it's a little bit of a harder thing to do. And so I always hold out hope that that is going to happen, and I'm sure that in many ways and in many cases that that does happen.
Just for the record, I don't hold out any hope of that happening. It's entirely beside the point to me.
I know that it certainly happened with regard to religion. There was a guy that used to post called Pestman Pat, and I had loads of exchanges with him over intelligent design and evolutionary biology, and they never seemed to go anywhere. And then he disappeared, stopped making videos, and then he made a video. I've been to check and his channel's not there anymore. I think he just posted the one video and he must have taken it down again. But he made a video saying hello to everybody who I used to speak with. I've not posted for a couple of years. It's been quite a traumatic period of my life. Everything that everybody told me, I thought on it, and in the end I realised my beliefs weren't sustainable, and I left my religion. I left my faith. As a result of that, most of his family had disowned him. Even his children, I think there was only one of his children that was still prepared to keep in contact with him because he was from one of these sort of religious groups that takes these things all too fucking seriously. But he had done that. But he'd needed that chance to go away from the online environment. He didn't just make one video one day arguing in favour of intelligent design and God.
So I'm waiting for the reason why it's worth it. Is it worth it because sometimes this rare thing happens?
And then the next day going, yeah, that was all a load of crap, I've had a rethink. But it just doesn't work that way. And what I learnt was, it wasn't me that changed his mind, but it wasn't me that didn't change his mind. Is that every single little good point
Let's
that
make
you
me
can
cough
make,
this.
this has been my experience, every single good point that you can make earns you a little credit there. And every little point that you can make rather than shouting at somebody, every little well crafted argument or legitimate point that you can make is just a little token to your credit. And
So the point is to change the rest of the world, I guess. You guys are all fucking nuts. This is, to me, this is about, see, I'm a political activist in the sense that I've tried to do various political actions. I have protected parks that were under threat. I have um, worked for political candidates and phone banked. And I have worked on political issues and trying to, where, for example, trying to get a particular law passed. And to me, this public discussion is for to inform me about how people think, so that when I'm doing activism or just in my life, I can be aware of all the millions of crazy ways people think. Now, actually doing the activism in this medium, like using this medium to convince other people, I don't see how that happens. I do see how you can collect a group of like minded people and maybe you could do something with them. And I also see how, if you are a journalist, that you could possibly do a service while collecting a group of like minded people. But that's because you're doing actual journalism and getting actual primary information that informs people. Um, a lot of things come from trying to learn what a lot of good things come, including things that convince people that are a part of the process, from an honest process of trying to figure out and let everybody say how they think and have the full light on it. A lot of good things. None of those good things are the goal. The goal has to be finding out how other people think. So, for example, I knew about young Earth creationism my whole life, but until we'd had this YouTube experience, I had no idea that they were actually out there and bold enough to actually defend and argue for those beliefs. Somehow I didn't realize that. So, seeing that, I realized, oh, and I got a size of how big and forceful that culture really might be. And not just from watching the videos, but from saying, oh, there's people like that, and then looking up the organizations and the people and the cultures in the states where this is going on, was primarily going on. that informs me and that allows me to interact with the culture in a way that, yeah, maybe minds will be getting changed along the way. But really, these debates, you're not going to convince Venom Fang X. And you can't take, you know, Hootie Tom 2 as an example of the one exception that proves that the exception isn't the rule. Anyway, okay, we have about a minute and a half left.
And maybe, just maybe for some people, there is a straw that will break the camel's back. And it isn't the last straw that breaks the camel's back that breaks the camel's back. It's all the other straws added together along with that last straw that breaks the camel's back. So I never see that it isn't worth making that argument to people. And it doesn't matter what it is that you're really passionate about. If you're passionate that women are getting this terrible deal in this particular sphere and that the patriarchy is responsible for it, my advice to you is to keep making your argument because it might work. If your position is that that's all a load of crap, actually, and it's a total misrepresentation of the way things is, my advice to you is to do that and to keep having those discussions, because it does look on the face of it online that nobody ever seems to be getting through to everybody and everybody's entrenched in their positions. But although there is a lot of entrenchment, I don't believe it's as bad as that. And people do change their positions, but they change their positions on the back of a whole host of arguments, and they change their positions often by going away and licking their wounds for a little period and then coming back to the discussion. Okay, that's what I wanted to be saying for a couple of weeks, really. It's on the back of some comments and some PMs and some things that people have said in video, and it's all just accumulated to a point where I wanted to just give my little thoughts on that. Okay, thanks for watching. Bye for now.
Okay, so the thing is, there's a principle that I learned making networked software, which is okay. It's the tenfold principle, and it holds remarkably well. But also, it's just an approximation. But there's a principle, a legitimate principle behind it. We make videos, right? 1/10. Well, no, let's put it this way. We make videos. 10 times as many people as us don't make videos but comment. And 10 times as many people as them don't watch videos and don't comment. Right? So there's this tenfold, and another tenfold is probably hearing about ideas that come from those videos, but not commenting or watching or anything, and so on and so forth. Consider it like an infinite regression of tenfold until you get all the people on the planet. And we do have influence on the planet because we know that with just 5, 6, 10 degrees of a separation, you reach from yourself into relationships with everybody on the planet, various kinds of relationships. And so if you say something to a bunch of people that watch videos that are 10 times as more as you, but a tenth of the outer echelon from them, they're the kind of people that also talk to people, bring up philosophy at a party or whatever. They talk about these kinds of things. And if, 4 or 5 of them mention them, then that goes to a second degree, and and since that's 4 or 5 people mentioning it, a bunch of times, some multiplicative kind of factor of times, it can go out there till, maybe there's someone 4 degrees, 6 degrees away from you that hears some idea, some phrase that you coined, some way of looking at it that you coined. So that does soak out into the culture. All right. At no point in a process like that would you expect another video maker to be the person that changed. That's not really their role. It could happen, but it's going to be the exception that proves the rule that people that make videos are holding a position. So it's other people that have more variant positions, and it's another process by which we could think that our discussion has an effect on the world. I would say that this is not a good reason. It's a reason, but it's not really a good reason for talking to SJWs or anti-SJWs or people you disagree with. The hope that you could be a pile of straw that crushes spines. I think it is a more healthy attitude that you're out there to find out something you don't know, which is why do they think what they think? Keeping in mind, I think what I think, I already disagree with the people that think the opposite, but I also don't understand how the fuck they can actually even think that. And by discovering that, you learn things about the argument, including your own position, and you learn things about being in a democracy. How are you going to live with people that may be having these different opinions because of basic likes? Like, I like chocolate, they like vanilla. I like the smell of curry, they don't. All right. I am not afraid of a population that has fewer per capita criminals than our society. They're afraid because it still means an absolute rise in the number of criminals. Okay, so we think differently. We have different preferences, and therefore we come to different opinions. And it's not really true that they should necessarily change their opinions, but it is true that I want my position to prevail. I want my nation to be formulated more in the direction I can accept. And if I know why and how they think what they think, it helps me in that effort. Now, the beautiful thing is it also helps them in their effort. To argue with me helps them clarify their own position, and we can let this all wash out. I think the problem is with the anti-SJW crowd is you're feeling a little bit cornered, like the end must be nigh.